Okay, so now we are going to look at the configuration, like how all of this was built, where I built work that I was able to use in that workflow. And again, because I'm admin, I can see right here, I'm able to see all of these tabs. So to begin with, I think I would rather talk about sorry, that is loading. Give me a second. Okay. So I can start by talking about the documents, right? What I use, like where what is stored. So in here, I will see that we have clauses that were built. I did not get to use any clauses on my form, but those are, I built the termination clause when I was studying for this. And again, it's more like we can build clauses that are reusable. I also have the CSV mapping files in here. The country/region. So in this case, it brings out the whole country stuff. I have a deployment tab, which I'm going to show you how I use later. But specifically for this particular workflow, even though in admin, I've stored my most important folders or files within the workflow folder. So if we come in here, we have the config, which is where the department, remember when I chose the legal, sales, IT department, that all begins from here. The state, we also have a state list that is in the system. So whenever we do the document generation, it grabs from there. For the CSV mapping files, these are the two main ones that, again, actually use just one of them, which is this first one, which captures the sales and the legal emails. On that CSV file I called on the first swim lane on the workflow, and I have the email settings. This is one that I created a couple because I use different formats or different wordings for the different personas. So I have one for external review, one for internal review, legal, sales, then the send for signature. So my stuff gets stored in here. And again, I showed you in Salesforce where the contract gets stored after when it's completed, and in Maxit, I showed you that within the Salesforce system. Here, I moved mine to be in the vendor folder. So within the vendor folder, I have the XYZ contracts, and we can see the contract we generated right in here. So I created a subcontract to carry all the contracts that were generated in here. So, excuse me. So that is it for this part of it. If I move over to task, I do not have much in task, but I want us to go back to admin so I can talk about the document generation, and we can talk through this now. So document generation, in here, this is where the form, the form that we're using, that when I pick the option use a generator form, the standard form. This is where this is where it is configured under the configurations. So I have two here. This is the one I'm currently using, and I'm going to click into it, but give me a minute. If we go underneath forms, it will show you the two. So the forms are right in here. This is the configuration, right? But when I talk of it, we have the forms in here. So if I go ahead and I click on the contract, this is the right form here, the Capstone contract here. If I click on that, you'll be able to see that form that I built. So when I click on that, all those pop fields that got auto-populated, this is where I configured them, pulling the information from Salesforce. So these are configured in different ways. And again, I have the send for review, which this is dependent on this. So if this is yes, it pops this one out. If it is no, nothing happens. And so this form is the same form that we use to go do the merge tags on the contract form. So remember that contract form comes blank. I'll be able to show you that. And what happens is we come copy the merge tags from here, and we put them on that form to make sure that everything populates right, like the customer name, the account name, which we have all in here. We have the customer, we have the account name, we have the date, we have the state, which it picks the address, and all of that information, it picks it. We use the merge tags to put on our document during generation. Then what else do I have to show you in here? If we look at the form, so that was a form preview. Let's go ahead and pull this down a little bit, and I want to go back to, sorry about that. So if I go back to document generation in here, I look at the forms. So for example, the forms library. So the forms library is, so again, I call them reusable items. That's where I created that field, the effective date. I have it in here. So it's a library, right, where we can keep the stuff that we need to use again. I created this, and you can see where they're used, and it tells you. So I have one for one is a date, and the other, if I click into that, no, cancel, redo. Okay, so this one actually holds just the date, the effective date stuff. So again, this is another way that we can, instead of creating on the form, exactly, we can create and we pull it from there, because when I created in the forms library, I was able to use that on the forms. So that's also good. There's also the EForms. The EForms, this is where I have all those config forms for the emails, right? So I created this. You're able to make a form. You can you can may submit. So we choose all of these different options. Normally she shows the workflow that we're using it in here. And what else did I use here? I did not use any smart rules. I did not use schedules at the moment. I also did attributes. And for attributes, so we have the address attributes and we have the general details. So the general details is every other thing that we capture on the form. I have the stage, which is what I wanted us to be able to see where the contract is. We got that. We also have the, sorry, let me cancel out of here, the address, which captures the city, the state, and all of that good stuff. I did not use this for this project. We can see the users, we can see the different groups, we can create user groups. And under user management, one thing that I created and I used and I thought that was really cool was the task groups. So I created different task groups for the different teams. So I have an internal team, I have a legal team and a sales team, and within each team we have different users in there. So we can actually assign something to a whole team. So it just helps in the way we manage our users. We can also create delegated permissions, right? So for example, in my users hub, you'll see that I have somebody that is just one of my users is just a Capstone user, is a CLM user. But if I wanted them to be able to do something specific, I'll be able to create delegated permissions for them, just like the permissions set we create in Salesforce. We'll be able to create the delegated permission and assign to them if we don't want them to have the whole admin permission like the other people do. So we create those delegated permissions and assign to them. Account settings, we've gone through that. Again, for branding, you can actually personalize this. You see in mine, I have the XYZ core logo. You can change your colors and all of that. Then while we are here, I think I should just go ahead and talk about deployment. And for deployment, so once everything is done, we've built all what we need to build. Everything looks good. What happens now is that this is in the test environment, right? We want to push this over to production. What do? We need to be able to say, hey, we create a package. You name your package. If I go ahead, I can say this is a Capstone package. I put a description and all of that. So again, we say, do we want to auto install package, or it gives you all these options, right? To override existing objects when installing, or do you want to include the account settings, whatever you've changed in there, do you want all of that? You get a chance to pick. But now that's just for the general setting. We also have the option to choose what we want to bring in, right? For example, if we go to attributes, we can say these are the attributes I showed you when I went in here. Do I want to pull the address attribute and the details? Let's say yes, I want those. And if we go to groups, I do not have any groups configured at the moment, but I do have forms, and I can say, hey, I want to pull these forms. Maybe that one I didn't get to use it. I did not configure any smart rules. For reports, I created a couple of reports. I can say, okay, we want to pull the Capstone document activity, and we want to also pull the steps, right? So we can say, depending on what kind of report we want to pull, we might have created a couple and we want to decide on which ones we are taking over with us. So I did create 2 reports in there. Then we can, when we go to the workflows, you can see when I showed you my workflows, I had more than one, but maybe I do not need this to go to production. Those were my test workflows. But the one I know I'm actually using is the Capstone workflow. So I'm going to select that. I created task group, and I'm like, hey, I want all my task groups to come with me. I did not create any reminder templates. The document generation, yes, I did create band. I can say, yes, I want that to come with me. And I did not create any of this. So once that is done, you see we have picked everything that we need to go with us to production, to the next environment. And all you simply do is you choose a storage location. So if we click on that, you'll see that I created a deployment storage. So this is where I want this to go. So I click on it and I click on select, right? So it says this is going in the deployment, and I save this. So once this gets saved, the package has been created. If we go now back to deployment, we should be able to see that package in there. So again, this is once everything is done, I receive an email that, hey, your package is completed. So if I'm able to click into that, 1 second. Let me click into branding. And again, so this is the whole idea. I think it's a beautiful experience building all of this. So branding, this is where I added the logo that you can see at the top of my screen here. If I go now back to deployment, we should be able to see that package that we created. And again, you can come back in and add stuff or remove stuff, whatever it shows that it is in this deployment folder. So that's it for the deployment part. I know I also created a couple of reports for this, and the reports I created, for example, the Capstone lifecycle, the idea of this report is to be able to see the lifecycle of the project, right, of the contract, how the stages, the steps that they took, how long it stayed at the duration for each step, which user completed each of the steps. So we are able to see all of that information in this report. For the other report that I also created, so it's a really good thing to see. For the other report, I have one for the activity. You can also create different kinds of reports, maybe on users. I did not create one for that because I don't have many users in here. For the activities, we can also see what has been happening so far, right? So you can see that preview was changed, attribute was changed, description was set, the different things that got done, on what date and by which user. So all of this is information that we can capture from here. And again, if I click on actions here, you'll see this action. This is an action that I call in Salesforce to be able to trigger this whole process. So without much ado, I think that this is what I had for you. And it was a good experience going through all of this. I had a good time. And yes, Let's see how this goes. Thank you all. And remember, you can always track the life cycle of your process in the activity by clicking on that activity, and you'll see how